Hello and welcome to today's edition of Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness. I'm your host, Les Winston, and I'm here to direct you along that road to human kindness. We believe human kindness, I believe human kindness is generated by being kind to yourself first, of course. That's a very important part of the process. If you're kind to yourself, then you can be kind to others. It's much better. It's much easier. In order to be kind to yourself, you need to be secure. You need to feel good about things. You need to feel comfortable in your current position. You want to make sure that you're economically sound. And we live in an economic world today. We're leaving the political world, and you're seeing the death throes of the political world now, striving to maintain its control over everything. And that's going to change. The economic world is upon us, and we need to be functional in the economic world to the degree that we can satisfy all the needs that we have and then also take care of the needs of the community. And you can do that by using Section 664 of the tax code. That's what I believe is most important. The section of the code that allows you to leave something to charity and get lower taxes while you're alive. It was a bargain that the government made with us back in 1969. And unfortunately, most people don't know it exists. But we here on Route 664 radio, we want to make sure you're aware of it. So we have a slogan, 664, not war. That's an important part of what we believe, that you can change the world, you can make the world a better place, and you can expand human kindness if you increase the charitable sector and you make the charitable world more effective. And that's what 664 is. That's what it was designed to do. That's why Congress did it all those years ago. But Congress put another wrinkle into it, and that is that you can get income from the device that they created. And they wanted people to understand that income is a very important part of the process of retirement. It is the process, and the whole key to retirement is knowing that you have enough income to live on. Income is the lifeblood of retirement. We call it endowment. You can endow yourself with income, and that's what they do with 664 trusts. 664 trusts allow you to endow yourself with income for the rest of your life, and that income can be passed on to the community to endow your favorite charities. That's the key to what we call the road to human kindness. My guest this morning is Chris Cyr. Chris Cyr is a CPA. He is a specialist in retirement education. He believes in educating us all about how retirement can be accomplished more effectively. Good morning. How are you, Chris?
Hi, Les. How are you? Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
You're frozen there. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, Les, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
No problem. So I was reading a little bit about your biography. We are in an economic time right now where there's inflation, where we have a huge deficit. We have the potential for something in the market. We don't know what that is. I see that you go back to and relate the story of your dad and what happened to him in 2008. Why don't you give us a little bit of a history of why you decided to teach financial planning in the retirement side?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'll give you the quick version. My dad and mom sent me to school to become some sort of finance guy. I became a CPA. All my degrees are in finance. I went off to the corporate world. I was a CFO in some pretty large multinational companies, supposedly knowing everything about finance, right? Just because you have all those letters after your name. Well, I didn't know anything about the stock market. My dad was telling me that this was about late 2007. He was telling me he was losing some money in his 401k less, and he was telling me after month after month after month that he was losing. And the entire time, his educated son, the person he was going to for advice, kept telling the same thing he learned at school, which was, well, don't worry, eventually the stock market will come back. And ultimately what happened is my dad lost nearly half of his 401k, like millions of other Americans did. I think there was a 16 or 17 month period in there where the market went down over 55%. And when we went to see his advisor, the advisor at the time told him that that's just the way it was, and he was going to have to delay his retirement. So I didn't really like my job in corporate finance. I ended up dedicating the rest of my next 3 years to figuring out what he did wrong and trying to help people avoid the mistakes that he made. And that's where I am today, helping people figure that out and figure the right way to do things in retirement.
So given the financial climate that we're in, what do you do? What are the things that you would recommend that people do right now? I mean, obviously, money is not going as far as it did. The inflation has eaten up 20, 30% of its value. We've got high interest rates, tough for people to borrow money to buy houses and even buy cars. What do we do?
Yeah.
What do you think
Yeah. So,
what do you recommend?
so I think a safety first approach is critical. You know, a typical American retiree, I think putting at least a third to 50% of their nest egg, their worth, in something that's guaranteed to do just what you just said, provide income. And certainly that's what you're talking about on your show is that income. That's an essential piece. And what we don't want to do in retirement is hope that these markets go up. We don't want to hope that so-and-so gets elected to office. We don't want to hope that inflation is going to be low. So locking in a certain portion of a retiree's wealth for me is step number one. And of course, you know, we have Social Security. Some people less are still fortunate to have pensions. But the reality is that most Americans today are not able to survive as retirees on their Social Security, and even if they have a pension alone. So you basically want to turn a portion of that nest egg into something that's guaranteed, regardless of what taxes do, regardless of what happens in the stock market, regardless of who gets elected. And I think that's key step number one for sure.
How do you do that? How do you guarantee something like that?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. First and foremost, I think it's important to take a step back. So I act in a fiduciary capacity. So by law, I'm doing what's in best interest of clients. And I think that's important. Step one, finding the right advisor is probably the most important decision that people make in retirement. But once you're finding that fiduciary advisor that you feel comfortable with, I think the ones that are doing it right are doing what I just said, putting a portion, that nest egg, into some sort of insurance product. Okay. The go-to
Why an
the best
insurance? One second. Why an insurance product? Why an insurance product?
Well, insurance, and we're talking about fixed annuities mostly. There's a great story about five old ladies that went on vacation. Have you ever heard that one? They put $100 in a shoebox.
No.
Oh, it's a fantastic story. That, you know, they're all retired, they're all old. They go on vacation, they go to the sun, the beach, and they just, one of the ladies has this great idea. And she says, you know, I've got a great idea. I'm going to put $100 into the shoebox, and all five of us are going to put money into the shoebox. And next year when we come here, we're going to drink our cocktails, and the first $500 we're going to use out of the shoebox, right? And everyone thinks it's a good idea. So they do that, and a year later they come back. And unfortunately, one of their friends, one of the five, has passed away. And now there's only four ladies, and they have $500 in the shoebox. Now, the question is less, how much was the return on their money? They now all have $125. They made great money, right? How much was invested in the stock market? Zero. So life insurance companies that are well rated basically are using this extra factor that we can't get out of markets. And that mortality factor is a way that insurance companies can guarantee you that you will get a payment. I call it mailbox money. We'll get a payment in your mailbox every month. And just like so, and oh, that's going to be guaranteed for the rest of their life. And oh, by the way, if you pass away, your spouse, your husband or your wife is going to continue to get that as well. So, and a long answer to your question, but in short, it's a well-researched fixed annuity that provides guaranteed income payments for life. And the way that gets done is through the power of insurance.
Are insurance companies, do they have any risk involved when you invest in an insurance company?
Sure, you know, everything has risk.
When you put money with an insurance company rather than just invest, let's say you're making a transfer of some of your wealth to an insurance company for them to guarantee you income, and that guarantee is backed by the good faith and credit of that insurance company, and that right. Is ratable, right? Those are rated by various companies as to their stability.
Absolutely. Of course, step number one is getting an investment grade A-rated insurance carrier. That's step number one. Step number two is making sure you're getting a lot of different ideas, right? Because there's a lot of A-rated insurance companies out there. Take a look at the 3 or 4 best products that may makes most sense for you. Most of these insurance companies, all these insurance companies have the backing of the state guarantee insurance association. So much like you might not deposit your entire net worth in one bank due to FDIC insurance, you want to follow those same steps in diversifying your income products among different carriers. You know, I've been in another story you don't want to hear, but this I'll make it quick.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I was 18 years old. My mother she told me, go get a job. I was 18 years old and I did. And I found this ad in the paper, and lo and behold, I was sitting as a telemarketer as an 18-year-old kid selling cookbooks to people. Okay. Well, the boss comes up to me one day and she says, hey, Chris, you like to make $2 more an hour? And if you ask an 18-year-old kid, would you like to make more money? He's going to say yes. Yeah. Long story short is she said, you passed the insurance test. You can, instead of selling cookbooks, you can sell insurance over the phone. I passed the insurance test at the age of 18. I sold life insurance over the phone for a month, went to college and never came back. But I've had my insurance license now for over 30 years. In my experience, even insurance companies that have been maybe lower rated, maybe not investment grade, that have shall we say, gone bankrupt. I've never seen an insurance, an annuity, an A-rated insurance carrier hurt a person, because what do we know happens to these insurance carriers? Typically, they get swallowed up by another insurance carrier. So, but there's risk in everything, including insurance products.
Well, the insurance business is based on risk measurement, and they're very, very good at that. And they know how to read mortality tables, and they are extremely generally well reserved, and they have a considerable backing to be able to make their payments, their guaranteed payments. So the question that I see most often is, how do I find a way to reduce my taxes? How do I find a way to guarantee my income? How do I find a way to protect myself against creditors? How do I find a way to protect myself against myself? And when it was hard times with COVID, were people invading their insurance contracts?
I would say they were invading their insurance contracts. I would say, though, that you've hit on, to me, what is potentially the biggest issue with retirees in America. I believe that most of us just don't understand this stuff. The things that you just said, taxes, income, insurance. It seems to me that, I remember in 2016, the president tried to make it so that by law, everyone had to get fiduciary advice, right? And when you say to a person, what's a fiduciary, and you explain to them that by law, they have to do what's in the best interest of their clients, you would just automatically think that it should be a law that everyone should have that type of advice, that somebody's giving something to them that is only in their best interest. But as you know, that's not the law. Unfortunately, if I ask an American 10 questions about their car, they're going to answer at least 9 out of 10 correctly. Mm-hmm. If I ask them 10 questions about their house, they're going to answer 9 out of 10 of those questions correctly. But Les, just as well as I do, that if we ask the typical American retiree 10 questions about their retirement, they'll be lucky to know 2 or 3. And so I think the biggest detriment, the biggest issue, and you really hit on it, is how do we find that right person? I've gone so far. 12 years ago, I started a document. It's called 5 Topics to Discuss with a Financial Advisor. It started out as a 3-page document to help people know what questions to ask.
Right. I'm laughing.
What are the answers?
You're hitting on that's a really, really, really crucial thing. Yeah. That questionnaire, you say you started out with a 1-pager and it becomes 30 pages because there is a lot of information out there. So I'm just curious, what are the 5 questions?
There is
initially. What are the 5 questions?
So it's not a 20-page document. It is a 14-page document. I call it 5 topics, right? So you start with asking the right questions about who you're really working with, right? I think it's funny when you walk down the street or drive down the street, you drive by a Ford dealer. We know that if we stop into that car dealership, that salesman is going to try and sell us a Ford. And we know if there's a Chevy dealer across the street, that salesman is going to sell us a Chevy. But as we're driving down the road, Les, and we see so-and-so financial company and so-and-so financial company, you know that one of those companies is probably going to sell 100% insurance to that person that you walk in the door. And if you walk across the street and it says so-and-so financial company, that guy is going to be selling commission-based mutual funds and nothing else. And the real answer is what? We probably need a little bit of everything. And it's very hard because as Americans, we don't know if this guy's selling us a Chevy or a Ford when it comes to retirement.
Yeah.
So the 5 topics are very broad. What questions to ask about fees? What questions to ask about how people are investing their money? What's your process? What's your feeling about this person? How long have they been in business? 14 pages of great things. It's all on, I think we have a website.
How did they get to you?
It's the number.
How did they get to you? How did you find that person in the first place? My guest is Chris Cyr. He is a CPA. Where are you located, Chris?
Illinois is our home base.
What city?
So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and we're now a little bit out of the city and the suburbs. But I guess you could say the world changed with COVID, didn't it? I think we have clients in 15 states, and just like you and I are talking right now, thousands of miles away, it seems to be that's the way of the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is so we found a new way to communicate, and I think in a lot of ways it's not a bad thing. I think that it makes it, especially in this area of financial information, financial literacy, for all intents and purposes, I think Americans are more financially illiterate than a lot of other places. We kind of take a lot of things for granted in this country, and we do rely on institutions to make sure that we're protected. And then we find out the institutions have failed us, and that's a real problem. And then you have the outlying, black swan that occurs once in a while, like a COVID or a depression or stock market crash, like in 2008. And I think people are affected by all that. That all is ingrained in their memory. I believe it's very important for people to have a real understanding of what it is to be able to create endowment. How do you actually go about creating endowment? I think that has to start early as opposed to later, because the earlier you start, obviously, the greater the endowment you can build. And knowing that the endowment is secure is, of course, a very vital importance to the individual, so that the individual can feel comfortable and secure. And that kind of leads to human kindness in the way we look at things. The human kindness comes from loving yourself, and then you can love the community. So we use the 664 devices. We call them social security devices. Social security sounds a lot like Social Security because it's very similar. They're both sanctioned by the government. The government gave us Social Security in 1934. They gave us Social Security in 1969. They didn't call it Social Security. We call it Social Security. But that's what it was. It was a way for you to make income, create income for yourself later in life, and then leave something behind to charity. And the Congress was infinitely wise at that time. They knew that what they had created was not going to be able to be sustainable going into the future because the demographics of the country were changing. And we're seeing that now, where you see Social Security is having its issues because you're supporting not just 2 generations, but 5 generations. You're supporting the great-great-grandfather, not just the grandfather, and not just, So we've come to a point where there's got to be a change, and we think the quantum change is getting people to understand 664. Just like they know what a 401k is, they need to understand 664 is a good thing, and they need to know how to use it and how to get to the point where they can use it, because it's not that complicated anymore. I mean, the wealthy in the country have been using it forever. The wealthy have, eliminated taxes, estate taxes, and they've reduced income taxes. They've eliminated capital gains tax, and they do it by using these charitable devices. And unfortunately, most people don't know about them. So part of our education process is to educate the public about the use of this. But we also believe, I believe anyway, that the advisor needs to be well-rounded. I think that the segmentation of the financial industry is a problem. You've got people who deal only in the stock market. It goes back to what you were saying. If you go to a Ford dealer, you're going to get a Ford. If you go to a Buick dealer, you're going to get a Buick. If you go to a wirehouse, you're going to get wirehouse services. If you go to an insurance broker, you're going to get insurance services. If you go to a CPA, you're going to get tax services. So you've got all these different advisors, and nobody is really coordinating all of it in a simple way that the individual can understand. Given the current financial world, when you're doing your educational process, are you including anything about the philanthropic side of it? Is that part of what you're educating?
First, let me say something, Les. It is amazing that I'm sitting here today in my office and the words coming out of your mouth are hitting home, and basically regurgitating the things I have been staking my last 20 years on, preaching to people. What you just said, that's how our business was founded.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was going across town to a CPA. Well, before she went to the CPA, she had been at the insurance person's office, told her to do one thing. She had gone across the street to the investment advisor. She had seen her lawyer, and then she finally makes it to the CPA. And the gentleman says, well, now it's April 15th, right? All these decisions were made last year.
Yeah.
And the CPA says, why'd you do all that stuff? And, people run around in circles. And I think, that was what the whole idea of what we do here. It's holistic. And I think it's important to find something that's holistic. It goes back to that document I was talking about, the topics to ask your advisor. But to answer your question, our AIM retirement system has 30 different steps in it. And one of the steps at the very beginning is to ask a person, what do you want to do with this money? I find in America, at least in my experience, there's three types of people. There's people that want to spend every last penny before they die, leave nothing to anybody. There's people that want to take care of their children. That is their primary concern. And then there's those that want to be philanthropic. And really, my best client is the one who wants to take care of all three of those people, themselves, their children, and make the world a better place. And which is why I was really intrigued with your entire 664 idea. We deal with this on a daily basis, and it's amazed me and my team how everyone's so different. I guess how do you remember the day that the light bulb went off in your head and you said 664, this is the way to do things? Do you remember that day? It doesn't matter when it was, but do you remember where you were?
Yeah, no, yeah, I do, and actually, because it was quite remarkable. It was in a discussion circle that was created at a conference that I was at, and the idea of the discussion circle was to take a piece of paper and a marker and write down the most crazy thing that you could think of, and put it in the middle of the circle for a discussion. And the most crazy thing that I could think of was, why aren't they taking the 664 idea and replacing Social Security with it? That's what I had learned at that time. Because you put in all your money to Social Security, that disappears into the ether. Whereas if you put your money into Social Charity, it goes into the community that you want to support, which is a big difference in the use of a social benefit. And that aha moment actually has led to pretty much everything after that. Led to a radio show called Funny Money, where we were espousing the concept of you can change tax dollars into real dollars. The funny money in everybody's holdings is really their tax liability that's sitting there that people never pay attention to, but they can actually convert that into real money. And you can do that using the charitable devices. And the charitable devices, the problem is that most people don't know the charitable devices exist. And that's
Right.
That's the biggest part of the problem. So the objective with 664 is and especially 664, not war, right now at this particular point in time. If we can get people to build more charitable wealth in the world, then we can take care of the world's problems without having to have wars. I mean,
Yeah, I
we're at
agree.
that, and we're at that point. I think we're at that point where it's not a question of whether it's going to happen. I think it is happening, and the leading edge of that is education. The leading edge. That's why your information really appealed to me as an interview, because you're a CPA who is teaching retirement planning, and we are basically endowment engineers who are trying to teach the public why they need endowment engineering. And the endowment engineering is really important. It's not a singular skill set. In other words, it's not an insurance based, it's not retirement based, it's not investment advice, it's not tax advice. It's all of those things combined without the pressure of a product, in a sense. The only product that
Exactly.
the endowment engineers are able to create a blueprint for the individual to follow with their advisors, so that the blueprint becomes the
300%.
way for the individual to engineer their endowment.
Absolutely.
When they engineer their own endowment, they also engineer an endowment for the community. And that's the end result of engineering the proper way. So when you show somebody they can eliminate defer the capital gain on a transaction, eliminate the state tax on a transaction, by a transaction, and reduce their income tax by the same transaction, and build an endowment income. Yeah, there's not much. Every time you get done with the presentation, they go, "Why haven't I heard of this before?" And this sounds too good to be true. And all those things are coming out of the person's brain when they're being exposed to this. They go,
I'm
"Holy
just
crap!
laughing.
I can't believe that exists." Yeah. So
I'm just laughing.
yeah,
We really are two brothers. You're what do they say? My brother from another mother.
yeah, yeah.
We are general contractors here,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
We're not, you don't want to be a product centric person. And if there is a product centric person, you have to run away from. We are the orchestrators of this.
Mhm.
I think you're on target with that. And I think you would agree with this too. When we're going through the process of the AIM retirement system, those who have these huge built-in capital gains, those are the people that seem to be most interested, in my experience, with the ability to save and give at the same time.
Yeah.
Is that what you find too? The built-in
Absolutely.
capital
Yeah.
gains is
I
where
mean,
it's at.
yeah, yeah. I mean, somebody selling it's somebody who wanted to sell a medical building. They were tired of being in the real estate business, and we showed them the advantage of using a pooled income fund, which is another form of social charity, like the child remainder trusts. But it's a lot easier to work with because you don't have to set up your own trust. You can just provide services are provided by a community foundation. And the individual has the right to direct their charity wherever they want.
Yeah,
We're at the end. We're at the end
can't beat it.
we're at the end of our broadcast. Unfortunately, I wish we had more time today to spend with you, Chris. It's been a real pleasure meeting you, Chris Cyr. The I my brother and another from another mother, yeah, who
My brother from another mother.
believes in the same thing we believe in, and that is someone who's educated in this area does a much better job of doing things for themselves. So we need to educate people, and not with an axe to grind. It needs to be done as a fiduciary as well. And appreciate your time this morning on the Route 664, the road to human kindness. Thank you, Christian Cyr.
Thanks, Les.
I want to remind everybody that we do have an app for our radio station. It's Route 664 Radio. Radio station is 24/7, and you can hear interviews like this with Christian Cyr on that station. They get replayed, and so listen to the greatest music for your happiness, and also some of our very special shows. Just
Just
Jazz
Jazz.
and Classy Sunday. We've got classical music, jazz. We've got all the great hits that Wanda picks. All right. We'll see you again next week. Have a great week.